Hello students and welcome to this lesson. Today's lesson is about teaching you how to install a local server on your computer. So it's optional for those of you who already know how to install a local server or for those who already have an active local host. If you don't know what a local server is, watch this lesson until the end, right? Otherwise, you won't be able to install WordPress. Well, first of all, why do you need a local host? A lot of people ask me this question. Well, the common practice in web development is that you have separate environments for development and production. The development environment can be your local host, while the production environment is the one where the final application will be available for the general public. In any case, I think it's always better to develop our solutions locally and then, just after it's ready, send everything out to a production server where your application will be available then for everyone to access. An important reason to use a local server is that it is better to make a mistake in a development environment than in production. Imagine the following scenario. You just install a plugin or update it to your system and eventually you break your site. If that happens on a local server, you have time to inspect why that happened before making the same mistake in production. So that's what we're gonna do in this course. For all students at first, I'm gonna teach how to install the local server, then how to install WordPress on top of it. For those students who want to learn just how to create a simple website at the end of the course, I'm gonna teach how to send the whole project to a remote server of your choice. Now, the most bold students, I believe they will not be willing to stop there. In the bonus section of this course, I go even beyond and I'm gonna be teaching something really interesting. We'll convert the theme that we'll be building into something greater than a simple website. But all in good time, right? Let's start by installing the local server first. Basically, in our local environment, we'll need the server itself, which in our case will be an Apache server. We also need the database, in the case is MySQL, and some application that can manage that database. And of course, we need the PHP language library itself. Without PHP, Apache, and MySQL, you can't even work with WordPress because it's made to run on top of that environment, right? To manage all of this, we'll be downloading a fairly well-known application called Xampp. Some say Xampp. I'm not sure about the right pronunciation here, okay? Let's go over to Xampp's website, which is at www.apachefriends.org. One of the good points of Xampp is that they have installers available for the main operating systems. As I'm using macOS 10, I'm gonna download the macOS version, but if you use another system, you see that the steps to the installation are not so different. You can click on one of these links and download the version of Xampp for Windows or Linux with the newest PHP version, of course. Those of you who, like me, are using a Mac, you realize that there are two types of installers. One of them is called Xampp VM, but we won't download this version, right? In order to follow the course, the normal version of the installation package is the one I recommend. To access the traditional version, I'm gonna click on this link. And as you can see, here you can also download versions for different operating systems with different versions of PHP as well. Notice that current versions of WordPress work with both PHP 7 and PHP as of version 5.2.4. But of course, the latest version is always the best choice. Older versions eventually lose support and can make your site vulnerable, right? By the way, a hint. The next time you look for a hosting service for your website, choose one that can offer you a more suitable environment for WordPress. You can see what the requirements to run WordPress are by visiting one of the links that is available in this lesson. I'm gonna choose my version for the macOS 10. As I said, I will not choose any of the VM versions. I'm going to choose the one with the latest PHP version. in my case 7.3.2. Maybe you see a greater version than mine, no problem whatsoever. Okay, it's done, file downloaded. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up the folder where the file is. As I'm on macOS, I'm gonna simply double click the file. If you're on Windows, pay attention to what I say. Right click and run the installation file as administrator. If you're on Windows, it is very important that you do so, right? That's because Xampp needs some special permissions, and we don't want Windows to think it is some kind of malicious software. So here on Mac, I just double click this icon. I'm gonna type my password. And I'll just follow the installation process itself, which is the same on any operating system. Here I'm gonna click Next. Next again to install with the standard settings. Next again. On Windows, you're gonna choose the installation drive, usually C drive. Here I can uncheck this checkbox, since I don't want to use Bitnami. Next. And one more time, next. And now the installation really begins. If you're on Windows, you may need to give some kind of additional authorization in order to complete the process. If you see any window pop up, just read the message and accept what it's asking you. Now from here on, I can launch the application. It says here that you finished the installation, and it gives you the option to open up the control panel. I'm gonna uncheck this and finish the installation. Now every time I want to fire up Xampp and its control panel on macOS 10, I simply look for Xampp here on Launchpad. On Windows, it will sit in the Start menu. On Windows 2, the control panel may not open up as soon as you run the application. To show the control panel, just double click here on the Xampp icon in the system tray, and you have the control panel back on the screen. Okay, so here's the control panel. Here I can start and stop all servers. For example, the Apache web server or the MySQL database server. And here I can also configure the Apache server or MySQL. That's very easy. So we have our development environment up and running. Now within this local environment, you will be able to create your websites, your PHP applications, as if you're using a server such as the ones you get on HostGator and GoDaddy. The real only difference is that this local server is on your computer, it's controlled by you, and it has a little less resources, of course. Well, to check if everything is really working, I can start all servers at once, just clicking here. But I'm gonna start both the MySQL and the Apache servers, which for now are both stopped, one at a time. It's not necessary to start Pro FTPD, right? So now the two lights are green, and that means they are working. If in your case any of the lights are not green, if they are red instead, you can open up the system log here under server events and check what's happening. Let's test if everything is working then. I'm gonna open up my browser application and simply write in localhost. If you can see this screen, it means that the installation worked and that the Apache server is running correctly. If you're not seeing anything like this, first check if the Apache server has started. Remember, the icon needs to be green, okay? To test MySQL, let's change that address over to localhost/phpMyAdmin, which is where you'll be managing your databases. Awesome, it's working. And here's where you'll be creating your databases in order to install WordPress. Okay, one more information before we leave for the next lesson. All the projects we create on our local server by default will have to be created inside Xampp's htdocs folder. The location of that folder may vary from system to system. In the case of macOS 10, this folder is here under Applications, Xampp. On Windows, this directory is in C drive, Xampp, htdocs. For our project, for example, we'll be creating a new directory inside htdocs called wc_course. Later on, all your other projects can also be created inside the htdocs folder, each one of them, of course, with a different name. By doing so, in order to access your project, you will just write in the word localhost / followed by the name of the directory you created, for example, localhost / wc_course. That's super awesome, but you understand that better in practice in our next lesson. Okay, hope this lesson was useful, guys, and I see you in the next one. Bye!